Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a really troubling story, the death of John William Cannon back in April 2023.
Yeah, it happened after a medical emergency during a trip with American Airlines.
Exactly. We've been looking at the details from the lawsuit filed afterwards, alleging negligence, wrongful death.
And our goal here really is to walk you through what reportedly happened, what the key claims are.
And what this whole situation might tell us about how airlines handle, medical crises mid-journey.
So let's start with the timeline. It's April 28th, 2023. Mr. Cannon is flying from Louisville to Durango, changing planes in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Okay. And the first flight lands in Dallas, and that's where the first major event happens, right? He collapses.
Correct. Right there on the jetway after getting off the first plane. Collapses.
And the lawsuit claims that despite showing concerning signs of medical distress,
They helped him up and essentially allowed, maybe even encouraged him to get on his connecting flight.
yeah, and really quickly too, something like 2 minutes and 15 seconds later is what's alleged.
Wow. That seems incredibly fast to make any kind of assessment about whether he was fit to fly.
Right. That's a huge part of the claim, that decision right there in Dallas.
Definitely a central point in the negligence allegations, allowing him to continue flying after a collapse.
So he gets on the next flight, the one from Dallas to Durango, and on that flight, things get worse.
His condition deteriorates. He becomes unresponsive.
But then what happens when they land in Durango? That seems, well, just as concerning, if not more so.
Absolutely. The lawsuit alleges a really significant delay, 20 to 30 minutes before they even called for emergency medical help.
And this was after all the other passengers had already deplaned.
That's the claim. And apparently, his friend who was waiting at the gate actually saw this happening, saw the delay.
So the emergency call finally goes out at 4:04 p.m. What did it say?
Reporting him as in and out of consciousness with labored breathing. Really serious signs.
Labored breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the time help arrived and they were transporting him,
He suffered a ventricular fibrillation arrest, a cardiac arrest, and sadly, he was pronounced dead early the next morning.
just tragic. So let's break down the specific points of negligence the lawsuit is focused on. What are they alleging American Airlines did wrong?
Okay, first off, not denying him boarding back in Dallas after that initial collapse.
And flight crews can do that. They have that authority.
Yes, Attorney LaRusso, who actually a pilot too, pointed that out. They have the authority to deny boarding for safety reasons.
Okay, what else?
Second, failing to give reasonable first aid during that second flight. Things like CPR or using the AED, the defibrillator.
Is there an AED on board? Is that standard?
Oh yeah, FAA regulations require them, along with crew CPR training. Though, interestingly, the lawsuit apparently mentions another case involving a faulty AED on an American flight.
Okay, not great. What are the other allegations?
Well, the big one we mentioned, that critical delay calling for help in Durango.
That 20-30 minute window.
Exactly. Also, not prioritizing getting him off the plane for medical help. Letting everyone else off first.
Instead of getting paramedics on immediately.
Right. And generally just failing to pay proper attention to how badly his condition was worsening during the flight.
And ultimately, all these alleged failures leading to a delay in him getting proper physician care.
Basically, yeah. The core argument is that the airline had this high duty of care for passenger safety.
And the lawsuit needs to show they were negligent, that they didn't act reasonably, and that negligence directly caused his death.
It's about proving cause and effect within that standard of care. Even things like the Montreal Convention, which usually deals with international flights, can sort of influence the thinking on airline liability in domestic cases like this.
So what are the experts saying? You mentioned Attorney LaRusso.
Yeah, he called that delay in Durango unbelievably frustrating, talking about the critical time that was lost. He also mentioned something called event aversion.
Event aversion? What's
Yeah.
that?
Sort of a theory that airlines might sometimes be reluctant to report or fully deal with incidents because it causes delays, disruptions, operational headaches, basically.
So potentially prioritizing the schedule over, say, an immediate medical response.
That's the concern he raises. Another attorney, McBryant, stressed that the lawsuit is about accountability, trying to push for changes at the airline.
And medically, was there a cardiologist's view?
Yes, Dr. Krieger. He emphasized that labored breathing, fluctuating consciousness, those are major red flags.
Things that should have triggered immediate action.
Exactly. And he stated that getting defibrillation to him earlier, well, it could have increased significantly his chances of survival.
Wow. So putting it all together, it really raises questions, doesn't it? About how effective flight crew training is in real emergencies.
And about that event aversion idea, could operational pressures sometimes compromise safety decisions?
And are those onboard AEDs always reliable, always accessible when seconds count? Maybe the FAA needs to look harder at the training requirements.
It highlights this potential tension, you know, between running an airline efficiently and the absolute duty to care for a passenger in crisis.
Okay, so just to recap for everyone listening, we've gone through the timeline leading up to Mr. Cannon's tragic death, the specific failures alleged in the lawsuit against American Airlines.
And heard from legal and medical experts who pinpointed those delays and decisions as absolutely critical.
Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to chew on. When you consider all these different decision points in Dallas, on the plane after landing in Durango, and you hear what the experts say about lost time and red flags, what does this case suggest about how airlines balance getting planes out on time versus looking after passengers when things go wrong?
And maybe, what questions does it raise for you about safety assumptions the next time you're buckling up for a flight?